Hello, listeners of the Calvary Cast. Welcome into another exciting episode of the Calvary Cast. I am Graham Parker, along with co-host. I'm also co-host, Jess Miller. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Good.
I don't know what else to say other than that.
No.
Don't have anything else to say.
Good intro. Regular intro.
Regular introduction.
Maybe that means no banter and we just get right to it.
We could do that. So today, a little bit different podcast for people. Not a book review, not a passage of scripture we're talking about per se. We'll do some hard-hitting journalism.
All right.
Hard-hitting interview. We thought it would be a good idea. We celebrated last month your 10 years of being here at Calvary.
Yes,
and
indeed.
the work the Lord has done through you. And so we thought, well, I'll interview you and ask you some questions.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Should this be an NPR-style interview or like hard-hitting journalism?
Yeah.
Here's NPR music. Could be something like this. Hello, welcome to Calvary Cast Interviews, where we have conversations with people who matter. And there's long, awkward pauses and stuff, things like that. And it kind of puts people to sleep.
Okay.
Or
What's the
not.
other option?
It could be like, I don't know what to say right here, but I'm your host. And today, we're going to ask the questions that matter to you, that no one else will ask.
I don't know. I like the first one. It's a little more, less intimidating.
Yeah, I think that's probably a better option. Or we'll just throw all that today. I just want to be able to play those sound clips there.
It sounded good, though. Those are great.
I know. Those fit well. That's why I'm a producer.
That's why you're earning your money here.
That's right. Okay. Well, let's, first of all, I think it's helpful for people to know what precipitated you feeling the Lord leading you into pastoral ministry. What, we talk about calls to ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have very distinct periods in their life where they're like, I really felt the Lord calling me to this. Other times it just happens,
Yeah.
What were those situations for you?
Well, when I was saved and we started, Nally and I and the kids started going back to the church I grew up in, and right away I just really had a desire to read the Bible and read good books and learn as much as I could, and then share what I learned with others. And within the first year or so that we were there, and this wasn't a good idea, by the way, for them or me, but they were already asking me to do like devotions and or give devotionals, and even, believe it or not, because we were only there maybe 3 years, and preach the morning service and stuff. Now, this was a really small church, very small church. The same people that I knew growing up, But at any rate, I think it was through that I started to get a desire to at least preach. And at that point, didn't have really much of a concept of pastoring, just preaching. So I felt this desire to do it, which was really kind of unnatural because it wasn't like anything I'd ever thought of before.
Yeah.
Even growing up in church, looking at my pastor every week thinking, who would want to do that? What a boring job,
Yeah.
And so I think that's just really how it started to begin. And then the church started affirming my gifting, not just that one, then the next church we were at, and then was sent to seminary for a couple of years and things. And I think it just over time, it just
kind of grew.
A desire was always there. And then a little more shaping in my thought of what leadership in the local church looks like, and not just preaching. And then more affirmation from the church and other leaders that I respected, culminating in like ordination and that kind of thing. So it was that combination, desire, and then, what is it? The providence of God, just working things out, desire on my heart, and then affirmation of his people. Because I would think for any especially special ministry like that,
that should kind of be there for everybody, right? If you're sensing, you have a desire to do it. Yeah. It's affirmed by other people.
Right. And that's why some of it isn't just, I want to do this, and then I go to Bible college and seminary, and
exactly.
There's no affirming. It should be those gifts and that calling should be manifested within the context of a local church of people that know you. I think that's the best way.
It's funny, isn't it, that like, because you could say, probably looking back, it probably wasn't the wisest decision to have a brand new believer like preaching, basically,
Right,
you know.
Right.
But yet the Lord used that.
Yeah, he did.
Providentially, you know, and
Yeah.
so yeah, cool. So then you have this desire, opportunity. How does the Lord lead you from Rockford, Illinois to Grand Junction?
Right. So at the time, well, after I was, like I said, I was in seminary for a couple of years, and then we moved back up to Rockford. Okay. And I became a part of that, the second church that we were at in our saved adult life. Some things fell through with the first church, and it was just a bad situation. But anyway, the church we actually left or was sent out to come here. Okay, so when we went back to that church, I was working with Slavic Gospel Association full time, and then kind of working for the church part time, and I actually got on staff as like an associate pastor, and was ordained during that time. So I was doing both. Mm-hmm. So I was really busy. And, but it just kind of came to a point where like, I still had that desire to be in pastoral ministry, but it was kind of cool to be a part of a parachurch organization, mission organization, and the experiences I had with that. So it was a good setup for me at that time. And I was coming to a point where there were some changes at Slavic Gospel Association. And I was just thinking, I either need to be in and stay and like give myself to this for a long time, or maybe it's time for me to leave. But, and I knew I wanted to be like, I got to go to Russia on a trip, and I accompanied a pastor over there, and I was bringing him to set up a meeting with a region of pastors over there and that kind of thing. But anyway, I remember laying in bed at like in the middle of the night there in Russia, and I couldn't sleep, and which wasn't unusual. I hate international travel. I hate it. And the pastor next to me, I was thinking to myself, I kind of want to be doing what he's doing, right? I want to be a pastor.
Yeah.
So I decided to let a couple of guys know about that had connections in churches out in the United States. And just like, I just told myself, I don't know what's going to happen to this yet, but if you hear of a church that needs a pastor that I would qualify for, which was going to be probably a church that needed revitalization and different things, because at that point I didn't have my MDiv yet. And
is that why you thought a church that you'd be called to would be a church that need some help?
Most likely, because I didn't have, a lot of churches that are a sound church in the sense of like everything's going well, and let's say their pastor's going to leave or transition out, they're looking usually for somebody with more experience, lead pastor experience, even different things. So, and I kind of looked at the idea of maybe church planting or doing like going to an older church that needed some a pastor to come in, and I just realized I'm not a church planter. It's just not the way I'm wired. So at any rate, I let those two guys know, if you hear of a church, let me know, and I'd at least consider it. So I went to the IFCA convention, Independent Fundamental Churches of America, and because SGA had a good connection with them, and I had a booth there and everything. And one of those guys that I told that I would consider a church was there, and he said, there's somebody I want to introduce you to. He sat me down next to the former pastor of this church, Dennis Finnan, and then asked me, just told him who I was in that, and we just talked. And he had left this church about 10 months prior. Things were not going well here in that intervening time, and he said, if you're interested, let me know, and you can give me your resume and I'll give it to the church. And so I thought about it, and about a weekend or so I decided that, I'll do that. I just sent it to him, and I heard from the church right away. And then that's what led to it.
So you wanted to be a part of it, or thought that you would probably head towards a ministry that needed some revitalization. So I'm certain there are probably expectations of what that would look like and the reality. Do you have thoughts on that? And maybe your first couple of years of ministry here, and lessons learned in that time?
Yeah, I think when we came out to candidate, it's obvious. You just with talking to people, because they put us in different homes and things, and then being around everybody, it was obvious that there were some problems, and that the church had gone through, and that had been going on for a number of years, but also especially in the 10 months just prior to, with them out, without being a pastor, it just was some problems. And yet when we met with them, with everybody, including the elders and deacons, we thought, I just had this subjective sense, like, I really think we're supposed to come here, and I don't think God is done with this church. Because it's no secret that, thousands of churches every year, like the last statistic I saw was like 3,000 churches a year in the United States close their doors for good. And it's a lot.
That's a lot.
And so if this church had remained on that trajectory from a human perspective, then they might have been one of those churches. The attendance was way down. But yet there was a glut of people here that were wanted to see the church continue to go. And so Nally and I both agreed, like, this is where we wanted to go. And so coming into it, I don't think I knew what to expect fully. I think it was more, there was naivete, of course, on a number of things. I was just, I don't know how to describe it. I knew it was going to be sick. I knew it was going to work. And not just because of me or anything. I just had that subjective sense. And I think 10 years in now, I realized that was right. It's like, I didn't have this hesitancy of, this isn't going to work. I just knew it was going to work. And so that's, but there were a lot of things in those first few years that, that I was naive about or whatever. And they all said in that video, they made a video for our church, obviously. For that
exactly.
And some of them in there were saying, you were wet behind the ears, you were all this kind of stuff. It's true, actually. I guess I didn't realize at the time how much that was true.
Isn't that probably good in a way that sometimes we don't know our own?
Right.
We don't know what to expect, and we are naive and don't know it.
Yeah.
That's probably a blessing from the Lord.
Right. Yeah, I think so.
Because otherwise you might turn tail and run.
You'd be hesitant if you knew certain things were going to happen or what have you. So yeah, it was, that was, I don't know. I don't know. Just looking back, I can't remember really what my expectations were. I just knew it was going to work if we just, if I just preached and spent time with people and, worked through things in that, I just was confident that the Lord would fix what he needed to fix and that kind of thing. So,
so over the last 10 years, has it been all roses, like all smooth sailing?
No, there have been issues in that, and obviously, there's a lot of people that aren't at our church now that were when I got here.
Yeah,
and some of those were office holding, influential people, and not all of them left to move to Denver for a job, right? So a lot of them left over problems in that, and so that to me is the biggest, like, if I'm thinking about challenges that I was naive about or like didn't estimate properly, would be the impact of relational conflict, especially as a person who doesn't enjoy it at all. And if you do enjoy relational conflict, you're weird anyway. But I think there are people that
you might cause relational conflict if you enjoy it. You're like, this is what I like to do for fun.
But there are people that are probably more emotionally tough.
Sure. Yeah.
I wasn't one of those. I don't know if I am more now. I don't know. But I know that I wasn't tough enough to handle any kind of relational conflict. Yeah. So that was an immaturity, actually, for leadership. Because if you're going to be in church leadership, you've got to be able to handle emotional conflict, relational conflict, and do it in a mature way. And that wasn't. I don't think that was me.
So if you think about difficult seasons and relational conflict, would there be lessons that you've learned from that maybe over 10 years? You could think, the Lord really grew me in this, and this is how.
Right. Probably a number of ways. I think that, I think addressing issues is important. It's probably the thing we don't want to do, but we should address issues sooner than later.
Yeah.
Be willing to have those tough conversations with people or things.
What about, and if you have more to answer that's good too. The other part of that I'd ask is, what things sustained you in the midst of, and even now, right? Like, this is just part of the Christian life. What sustains you? How does the Lord sustain you in those periods of difficulty in ministry and relationships and things like that? Any particular passages of Scripture or things people did or said?
Yeah, I think a lot of times it was things people did or said. So, and again, I don't want to paint a picture like there, I hear of some other guys going into certain churches, and I hear about their stories. I'm like, man, we didn't experience anything like that.
Right.
So I don't want to make this like it was bad, but it's no secret to anybody who's been around. We've had some families leave and different things that happened along the time that were challenging. Okay. So, and maybe again, if I'd have been a little emotionally tougher or whatever it is, or wiser, it would have been hard. But I think there would be encouragement from people that knew what was going on at some of these different points and were just supportive, and that was really helpful. So I think, those were, it's mainly through people, but of course through His Word. I can't think of an instance of it, like a particular instance of that, like where something in a verse would stand out to me or whatever. But they were certainly there.
Yeah.
It was God sustaining, and even just keeping me keeping me here. Don't not
sustaining you.
Yeah.
I like there's evidence of that. The Lord sustains.
Yeah.
Sustains His people through all seasons.
Right.
Good and bad.
And I think anytime we're being humbled, we hate it. And anytime, like a lot of times we don't like to be brought into situations that are emotionally so confusing, where you don't know if you're right or wrong, and you don't know left from right or up and down, and you're just confused or crushed or scared, or we don't like that. But honestly, I think God's most at work when that's happening, right? Because that's when you're saying, God, please just help me. Yeah. And even when He doesn't, it doesn't even seem like He is helping you at times, right? But like He is. Yeah. And then sometimes He would he'll throw something in there that's so clearly Him. Like I can remember one time praying, like, Lord, you're not helping me with this at all. I said that to Him. I said, you're not even helping me right now. Wow. And that day I went to lunch with another pastor, and he said, I just felt like the Lord wanted us to get together because I needed to help you. And I was like, wow. It's like that's just amazing to me. But I think that's my experience here. But you're bringing this out for other Christians as well. Like people in our church that are going through suffering, like they probably could say the same things. And the Psalms and that are filled with just cries to God, like, why is this happening? Why aren't you doing anything about this? I didn't sign up for this. It's like, I don't need this in my life or whatever. But it's like, God knows how to take care of us and mature us. Yeah. Right. We need to let patience have its perfect work so that we can be mature and complete, lacking in nothing.
Let me ask you just a couple of kind of broad overview questions, if that works, and then we can wrap this up. Has there been a guiding principle or philosophy or passage of Scripture that you could look to over the last 10 years, or have you grown to see something that you thought was important more important?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
I think a number of things on that. First of all, the idea of pastoral ministry more than preaching. Okay. So which was different for me because I'm primarily a preacher in my gifting. And so seeing pastoral ministry not first and foremost just through the lens of preacher, but as pastor. So I don't know if that makes sense. Like,
yes,
growing and learning. I knew that was important before, but like, it's really super important. And I think preaching pastors always have to keep correcting themselves and being like, we've got to pastor people,
right.
you know, like Jesus told Peter, you know, feed my sheep.
Yeah.
Which
is what you're saying. That's more than just preaching.
That's more than just preaching.
Right.
Shepherd the flock of God among you.
Right.
You know, and so that became important. So those in like reading guys like what's his name? He the Message Bible.
Eugene Peterson.
Yeah, Eugene Peterson. Theologically, like,
yeah, wouldn't agree.
We wouldn't even have him preach here, probably. I mean, but like when it came to pastoral ministry, he got it, and I mean, so reading his stuff was really helpful, and you know, and I still have a long way to go. I know that, and that's why I say we got to constantly keep correcting ourselves and reminding you're a pastor, elder. There's not even an office of peer preacher necessarily.
Right.
You're a pastor, elder who preaches.
Yeah.
And then 1 Timothy 4 was influential, it still is, about, you know, give yourself to the public reading of Scripture, to exhortation, to teaching. He says, be in these things, right, so that all may see your progress. And that, I've really prayed that. Like and I know that's God's will, right? He wants the church to see my progress, so I want that to happen too. And so, you know, whether that be in my gifting or anything else that we walk through or whatever. So that's been pretty influential as I think about that.
What would be, if you could think of, and I think this would be an encouragement to the people, what have been some of the greatest blessings for you over the last 10 years of ministry?
Wow. Just seeing God answer direct prayers. Coming in the season we're in right now, which to me has just been, it's eerily quiet and peaceful. I'm like, is this a calm before a storm? What's going on? It's just really, to me, it's just nice. And even, so if we just think about, let's say our Sunday morning service, I just feel like, you know, the Lord's just finally gotten us to the point where it's like, this is what we do on a Sunday morning, and we're confident in this is the way the Lord wants us to be. And because for so long, it always felt like, and you know, we're still changing. We're still going to try to change. We're still doing this, and I just couldn't wait to get to the point where it's like, no, this is who our church. This is what our church is. And so when visitors would come, you know, there wasn't this sense that things weren't quite stable or whatever, and sometimes people would come with lots of advice and different things. But I think one of the greatest best seeing that, also being a part of people's lives for a long time, like the families that are here getting to marry, you know, or officiate the wedding of Nate and Aubrey, and having, you know, seen Aubrey kind of grow up, and then also with even memorial services of people that have been here. So those kinds of things are cool. I like that. Yeah. So I think for me, I like the idea of long-term ministry where you're just with one people for a long period of time and getting to see the fruit of what you're doing. So that's really important. But seeing God answer direct prayers, you and Jenna were direct, like just so clearly an answer to prayer. And I didn't say to God that time that you weren't helping me, but I said, I don't know what to do right now. And then meeting with Mark and having you guys come out, and I think this being such a good fit, you guys being here and stuff. So I think all those kinds of things, like I've just come to the point where it's like, man, if we just ask God for what we need, we may have to wait. Yeah. He doesn't do it like all the time right away.
We think immediately right now.
Right. Yeah. There have been times where I've seen him do that, like immediately. Yeah. And then there's other times where it's like, you know, couple of years down the road, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that prayer is being answered right now or whatever. And I think that's really cool. Yeah. So that might be another lesson learned, like, right? Like, what do you need? Just pray. Yeah. Ask God, because he really knows what we need. Right. And what we don't.
We run around so often thinking we can like fix it and just produce it on our own. And rather, if we just trust the Lord to do it, he will do in his time so much better.
Yep. That's right.
Okay. One final question. Thoughts for the next 10 years and beyond? Do you have thoughts for where we need to grow as a church, things that, what does the next season of ministry look like for you, if you can project that forward?
Yeah, I think for me personally, just growing in the things that God has shown us to do, right? And growing in pastoring, growing in preaching and teaching, and learning and gaining knowledge still, because like that's, so just on a personal level, like want to keep learning, keep growing. And then for the church, I think just keep doing what we're doing, and then wait for God to open doors where we should do something more in an area, right? Or opening up areas of ministry. So I don't like the idea of like setting a vision.
You're not going to cast vision for us right now?
No, I like the vision of just what the scriptures point out, right? Yeah. And Ephesians 4 of this growing into maturity as a body. Yep. So if we just keep doing what we're doing and get, just keep growing in what we're doing. Yeah. And then let the Lord just do whatever he's going to do. Yeah. So that to me is what
we should do.
You should do it as a church and as an individual. You're growing in maturity, and so keep following the Lord.
Cool. Anything else that you have to say?
No, I don't think so. I think that's it.
Okay.
Really good to be here, and then we'll do one of these in 10 years again for me, and then for you at your 5-year mark. So when's your 5-year mark?
Couple years.
All right, couple more years.
Year and
maybe
a half.
We'll do a 5-year.
Okay.
Graham Parker interview.
Sounds good. You do some hard-hitting journalism then. Well, we hope this conversation has been helpful for you and for those who are part of our church especially. We love to hear from our listeners, so you can email us at thecalvarycast@gmail.com or text us or call us, come up and talk to us on a Sunday. Ask a question of Jess that I didn't. Maybe you have a more poignant, catch him in the tracks question than I did. At Calvary, we exist for the glory of God, the good of his people, and the Great Commission. Until next time.